A bill titled Baby Food Safety Act of 2023 was introduced by Illinois Representative Raja Krishnamurthy on December 13, 2023. This bill creates definitions for baby and toddler foods in current United States Code, Title 21, Section 321, which is part of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. This act, and the United States codes that were created from it, make up many of the rules the FDA follow, the Food and Drug Administration. Infant and toddler food is any food products intended for consumption by children 2 years or younger, as well as baby formula. The bill also creates limits for certain toxic elements by adding a new section to the end of United States Code Title 21. This new section requires the Secretary of Health and Human Services to create limits for 4 elements: lead, cadmium, mercury, and inorganic arsenic. They will also make new limits for other elements or change current limits, based on new studies in health information. The Secretary of Health and Human Services will have to determine if the limits they create or change are possible during the manufacturing of food products, and to what extent the elements in question are able to be reduced. Any changes the Secretary of Health and Human Services makes will be published for public viewing in the Federal Register, which can be found at govinfo.gov, as well as having open for public comment for at least 45 days. These changes must be accompanied by the scientific evidence and reasoning. For the initial 4 elements, the Secretary of Health and Human Services must propose their limits by certain dates: lead, arsenic, and cadmium before January 1, 2025, mercury before May 1, 2029. For new limits being proposed, the Secretary has a maximum of 18 months to fully establish a limit. These limits determine the point at which toxins are harmful while still being reasonable for manufacture standards. Guidance on how to comply with the new limits will be published along with the limits themselves. The Secretary of Health and Human Services will review the limits either periodically over time, or as new information is made available. This bill also adds an additional criteria for adulteration of infant and toddler foods to United States Code Title 21, Section 342. Adulteration is defined as making something worse, either in quality or function, by adding something to it. When these food products have excess of these elements or chemicals in them, they are considered adulterated and not in compliance with the new regulations. The Secretary is given authority to make a recall on infant or toddler food products, except for infant formula. Primary impact: first and foremost, this bill will help protect children from harmful toxins, elements, and chemicals that can be found in manufacturing plants where these are produced, even if they are actually made from real food products from start to finish. Children are susceptible to many fluctuations in food intake, let alone harmful products. Secondary impact: the food industry, including the FDA, has been very prone to make decisions based more on who the rules will affect and less on what the actual health impacts are on the people of the nation. Milk intake, cereal grains, and the entire food pyramid are some examples. There are less savory examples, but I do not wish to broach on defamation territory without much stronger evidence than hearsay and YouTube videos. The Secretary of Health and Human Services has a duty to the American people, as does the FDA, and many of us rely heavily on their integrity to live healthy lives. Tertiary impact: even regulations that aim to have positive impacts like healthy food for our children will still often impose rules that cause increases in costs to companies that inevitably result in increased prices. Inflation is almost always going to be an outcome from government rules and regulations. In this instance, since it is the health of our children at stake, inflation is not a bad price to pay.